Hey people, what's up? Hope y'all are doing well. So, a new piece dropped in the Atlantic called Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty with the subtitle We Need to Forgive One Another for What We Did and Said When We Were in the Dark About COVID. And wow, does it completely miss the point. Her basic point is many hardworking people did their best in a tough situation, and we should all forgive excesses from that time. Well, except for those dastardly misinformation people. Even in its ostensibly cathartic tone, it sounds tribal in the insistence that some people stay beyond the warmth of this little kumbaya campfire. It reads like an olive branch presented to an in-group by throwing the undesirables under the bus. Given the audience of The Atlantic and where that publication came down on issues during COVID, it is mostly a plea to the reader to forgive themselves. Let's start with the conclusion and work back from here. Here, towards the end, we get to the point. People who got things right may want to gloat, and people who are wrong get defensive. Getting something right took a lot of luck, and getting things wrong was an immoral failing. And this is where she is missing it. It wasn't the getting it wrong that is the moral failing. It is the hubris and the resultant action that were the moral failings, which she clearly doesn't understand. We had to put these fights aside and declare public amnesty, but leave out the purveyors of misinformation, who may be some of the people gloating about being right. She talks about advocating for the reopening of schools, only to be called a teacher killer. Sounds like an Atlantic reader. I bet to some extent she was also accused of being a purveyor of misinformation. She feels like someone who understood within her field that the policies were wrong, but still tacitly endorses the need to silence others who question policy. But if those people weren't well-meaning experts like her. The situation we had was there was a narrative, and people who dissented from that were deplatformed or deemed to be spreading misinformation. She knows that she was acting in good faith, so she doesn't see her place in this dichotomy. So she is still perfectly happy to throw other people under the bus. So let's go look at some of her examples. Starting out, she talks about her family wearing masks on hiking trips and not knowing outdoor transmission was rare, and that the bandana mask she made didn't do much. I would argue that there was evidence in April 2020 that the outdoors were safe, but that doesn't matter. She was acting with an abundance of caution, which I wouldn't fault her for, especially during that time. As we were doing this societal post-mortem on the pandemic and our reaction, people erring on the side of safety in their own lives isn't something that most people care about. The issue is people taking their own aversion to risk and forcing that on the entire population, and then trying to destroy the people who descended from that. Next, she talks about some health professionals preferring the Johnson & Johnson vaccine over the mRNA vaccines. Once again, these were new vaccines and we didn't really have much history, or any history at all, really. Mistakes were going to be made. I don't think there are many people who care about which vaccine was suggested by which health professional, but this only hints at the bigger question. She's dancing around the edge of what would really need to be forgiven, but doesn't say it. Was it appropriate for health professionals and governments to push for mandatory vaccinations? At first, we were told it was over 90% effective at stopping transmission. That number kept falling. In and of itself, this is fine. It is a fluid situation, and people are working with limited data. The problem was immediately demanding everyone take it or be shunned from normal society. And as a disclaimer that I still feel I need to do even now on social media, I got vaccinated early, and I know a few people who were vaccinated that the vaccination could very well have been the difference between life and death. So I'm not against the vaccines. I'm happy they were created, but everyone is in their own situation with their own risk assessment. The problem isn't that the experts got things wrong with the efficacy numbers. The problem is the hubris of taking away the ability of the individual to weigh those risks to their own unique situation. But this seems to be an aspect of the story that she really doesn't want to bring up. Then we have this gratuitous line about, remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach? Well, I remember a lot of media smugly doing so because they thought it was an easy dunk on Trump. I was at work and checked my phone and see stories along the lines of doctors warn against drinking bleach after President Trump tells them to. That ain't good. Then I watched the video, and what he said may have been medical nonsense, but he didn't tell anyone to ingest bleach. The impression I got was he wanted to shove UV lights into people's lungs. But the actual video seemed relatively normal after reading about him telling people to drink bleach. And I think one of the advantages he had was the overzealousness of many on the left, but that is a different topic. The point here is that she wants to remind the readers it isn't amnesty for everyone. She wants us to come together and forgive, but only a specific group. Embrace the Faucis and Whitmers of the world because they are on the side of angels, and if they had to goose step over the citizenry, well, they were only doing their best. But still, to hell with the people who stood against that because, misinformation, which turned out to be right, but that doesn't matter because they're not among the enlightened select. This would be somewhat easier to take if it wasn't calling for forgiveness while accepting for those people. It is the same shit that they were doing during the pandemic. You should listen and respect us, but not them. And she closes with, we shouldn't dwell on the mistakes. I disagree. The gloating isn't really gloating. It isn't about being right or wrong on the science. We had a scary and uncertain situation, and our experts and government officials chose to steamroll people. When times looked hard, they chose authoritarianism. There are leaks coming out the last couple days about DHS conspiring with social media sites to silence people, but I guess that's okay because they were deemed the misinformation people. Businesses were closed forever, lives were destroyed without people having any control or say in the decision, and these people doing it learned nothing. There haven't been mea culpas. Fauci is out there equivocating about his role in school closures. I'm seeing Whitmer and Hochul lying and still clinging to the idea that what they did was justified. If another situation occurs, they would grasp power all over again. And that is the issue. People need to remember that all the smart people grabbed power because they knew they were right. Except they didn't. They are fallible and should not be given deference that suggests otherwise. It isn't about gloating for gloating's sake. We have to move the Overton window. We have to put it beyond the threshold of shame for even the most craven, power-grasping son of a bitch to even suggest pulling shit like this again. That's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching to the end. If you have any comments, suggestions, corrections, drop those down below. I hope you found today's video interesting. I try to give commentary that's sometimes accurate and occasionally even sober. I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, remember, drunken all for Supreme Court. Bye.